So I had this idea for a book I'm going to do, videos I'm going to do on my work history. And the titles I have so far are just work, exclamation point. I did a video, a rant last week about unemployment and people collecting unemployment and the PPP loans in this new environment we're in with COVID and work. And then I thought of another title called So Tell Me About Yourself. And that's like the first starting question for job interviews. And thinking that, I'll start it off by my having to relearn how to interview for positions and do a resume and go through those interview questions. Tell me about yourself. And I'll be telling you and the world about myself and my work experience, and hopefully teaching others how to work better as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as working for someone else, which I'm now doing. I'm doing both. I still own and run 2 companies, which are being challenged because of the COVID thing, and I'm learning from that. And I'm working for someone else, for a large home improvement retailer, having to learn how to work for someone else after not doing so for 20 years. And I think there's value in that. My work experience, my parents didn't force me to work. They never told me to get a job. They both worked. I think my mom took the first couple years off, I think until I went to kindergarten. She didn't work from when I was born till I went to kindergarten. My dad worked in banking, working his way up from literally like a teller position to management and vice president and that kind of thing, commercial lending. And then my mom got a secretary job, and they both did that every day. And I knew that they both couldn't stand their jobs. And that was a big impact on me. So growing up, and I wanted to be a soldier of some sort, and I was totally always into the military, war stories. I was fascinated with the wars and guns, and my parents were pacifists, and they would not let me have any guns, and I had to make my own guns out of wood or have my grandparents buy them for me. And they hated guns, and I loved guns, and I was fascinated by war and the military and fighting. But I also recollect wanting to be an architect. For some reason, I like building things with blocks and things. But I also remember always wanting to playing like CEO, business owner, head of a company president, the boss. I remember that quite vividly from a very, very young age. And I am an only child, and I'm very independent, and I don't like taking orders, so the military probably wasn't a good fit for me. Although I do regret not just doing it for a few years. But being an entrepreneur and a business owner and being my own boss was definitely the path that I wanted from a young age. And I tried to, structure my education and things I was interested in and skills to try and figure out how I could do that. And I didn't have, I don't think I even had a job in high school. I had a couple lawn mowing jobs. I mowed my grandmother's lawn. That's like the first job I did. I'd drive from Grosse Pointe to Warren with the lawnmower in the trunk of my car to mow my grandmother's lawn, which is a huge lawn, with the push mower. And I think it was more just to have my grandmother see me once a week than she needed her lawn mowed. But that's the first transaction of work for money that I can recall. And once I started getting paid for like a job, and I really liked that. I really liked doing hard work and getting paid for it. And one of the things about my current position is it's hard. It is hard ass work on a mental level, on a physical level, and you don't get paid much for it. But ironically, there's a certain satisfaction, and I'd be more satisfied if I got paid more for it, but that's the world we're in. But I mean, there's a certain satisfaction that you busted your ass every day from an early morning in a shitty job. There's a certain satisfaction to that I get anyway. A certain like sacrifice, you know. And the next job I had was after my freshman year of college. I came home and got a job mowing lawns with a friend of mine for a couple of guys from high school that had a lawn mowing company, and he had that job, so he got me a job doing that. And it, you know, it was a good summer job, but it was absolutely awful. But you know, we could be outside working on our tans and screwing around. It was with one of my friends, my two closest friends from high school, and one of whom, and they like Phil, who I had the lawn mowing job. He worked because he liked to buy fancy clothes, and that's the only reason he worked. My other friend Alex never worked, never had a job, always talked about getting a job, but his dad was a physician, and they were pretty well off, and he never had it. They just gave him money. I don't ever remember him having a job. So I didn't have really a good background on my side of the family of work. My grandfather was a bricklayer, and he had his own company. I remember looking up to him for that because he had his own bricklaying company. I thought that was really cool. But he lost that because he mismanaged it financially or something. And then he laid on the couch like in his 60s, like every day, watching game shows. That's all he did. While my grandmother went out and cleaned houses in her 60s that were like hours away. She had to drive to clean these houses, and that's how she made money, and they made money. So I had a good work ethic from her, because I saw how hard she worked at everything she did. And I remember my friends and I would stay up and party till the wee hours of the morning, and then we'd have to go cut lawns. And my other friend would do things like throw up when we got to the job site. So they'd think he'd sick. He was sick, but he was sick because he drank too much the night before. And then we got to go home, or he'd pour like his pop in the lawnmower gas tank instead of gas, and screw the lawnmowers up so the lawnmowers didn't start. So he's always trying to get out of work. And both of those friends from high school, my two best friends from high school, are both dead from drugs and alcohol. One of whom, the guy who never had a job, who was supposed to be a doctor, went off and actually became a Green Beret, amazingly enough. Like, he always had the like athletic, and he was always interested in that kind of stuff, and he was smart, and he was always looking like for challenges, but he just didn't have direction. His parents just didn't pay any attention to him. But he ended up like joining the Army, I guess, and became a Green Beret until we learned, and I only learned about that when we went to his funeral, and saw all his Army Green Beret medals and things. And then he got out of that and had to get a job working construction, and hated that, and ended up overdosing from heroin. So he didn't have the work that he loved, and he had no direction, and no calling. And it's sad that his family wasn't that. So he was always looking to go somewhere else through drugs, ever since I knew him, and he ended up dying. And after the lawn mowing job, next summer I was home. I got a job painting for another high school friend of mine, and his brother had a painting company, and that was probably the worst job I've ever had. Next to, yeah, I hate painting, scraping, getting every bit of paint off old houses on a ladder, and then painting and getting paint on the windows, and you have to clean it up. I hated that. And the most memorable thing from that job, there's a guy that was with the company that just went up there, painted every day. That's what he did. He was painting for like 20 years. And he chewed Copenhagen and just swallowed it. So we were painting like these fancy houses at Grosse Pointe. And, you're up on a ladder. He didn't want to spit everywhere. So he swallowed his dip all day long. Like, I can't imagine what his insides were like. And he was on, this is really bad. I was scared of heights at that time. I was really scared of heights. And we were on these frickin' ladders trying to scrape and paint these frickin', 200-year-old windows. And we were on a break or something, eating lunch or whatever. And I asked the guy, hey, have you ever fallen off a ladder in your painting career? And he's like, nope, never. Been doing it for like 30 years. Never fallen off a ladder. So we go back to work, and then all of a sudden I hear this boom, boom, crash, boom. And I just hear this this groaning, and the freaking guy fell off his ladder and landed in this, like the windows that were recessed in the ground in the basement, fell into that, and he was all twisted up. He ended up walking away, and he was fine, and I guess he like quit after that. And he had been painting for this guy for like 20 years, and I jinxed him. The whole job was a jinx. And then my friend's brother, who owned the company, never said anything to me. Or then he ended up bringing me my last check to my house, which I thought was kind of weird. And he's like, yeah, we'll call you for the next job. And they never called me again. So I guess that was their way of firing me or something. I don't know why. But I was glad, because from that, actually before that, I got it through a contact through my in-laws. So I met my current wife, my only wife, my girlfriend after my first year of college, Leslie. And one of the things that attracted me to her was her work ethic, her family's work ethic. Her dad is a very successful business owner, entrepreneur. And as I mentioned, my desire to be a businessman, entrepreneur, a business owner, like that. I saw him. I saw how successful he was, and he was just like a regular guy. He wore, he could dress up, but he wore most of the time shitty normal clothes, and he'd go out to the farm and hunt and fish and work with his hands and work in the garden and till his garden. And I thought that was just so cool that you could be so down to earth and do blue collar work and work with your hands, and then be like a top CEO, executive, smart, working with insurance, and I just really looked up to that. And I really looked up to how hard the work example that he set, and that really attracted me to her and her family and him. And one of their friends had a valet parking business, and I worked for I worked at his farm, my father-in-law, my future father-in-law, and at their house I painted for them and did odd jobs and cut their lawn. And I really enjoyed that feeling of doing a good job for money. And one of their friends had a valet parking gig that he was doing with some of their friends that they had in high school, who were, let's say, long-term Detroit families that had businesses, but weren't necessarily in the restaurant business, but they owned the lots for the valet parking. And they got me a job valet parking at first the 1940 Chop House, which was like the new fancy restaurant in downtown Detroit. So I started valet parking, and I tell people to this day that I learned more about business from my valet parking job than I did at my MBA at the University of Chicago, without a question. I learned how to hustle for $1. I learned how to think on my feet fast. I learned how to work through problems that just come up that no one had a manual for. And I learned the direct relationship with good service and the cash that ended up in my pocket. And I could never understand the guys that I would bring my friends to work, and I'd end up with a huge wad of cash and they'd end up with nothing. And they just wanted someone to, every car they parked, and we worked all on tips, 100% tips. That's where I started my love for sales, working for doing things that had a direct relationship between the effort you put in, the service you provided, and the money that you were compensated with. That's what I love. And I need to find that again. And I have that with my fitness business, and I'll continue that. And they could never understand that you hustle, you go above and beyond for the client. And not everyone. Some people are going to stiff you no matter how much you do. That's business. No matter what you provide to a client, to every client, some of them are just going to be assholes, and they're not going to appreciate it, and you're not going to get compensated, and that's the way it goes. And but for the most part, most of them will. If you provide a good service, provide value, hustle, you'll be compensated. And these guys wanted to get a tip for every car they provided. They wanted to be provided an hourly wage, and it didn't work like that. You hustle, you be the first one, you remember the people's cars. I mean, a stupid menial job like valet parking, and this is true for any job. There are subtleties. The basic business is, you get into someone's car, you park it, you bring it up when they come out. It's stupid. It's simple, but there are subtleties that make the difference between someone that's great at that business and someone that's just average, and they'll make an average wage. And that's attention to detail, remembering people, hustling. I would, you see the same, and people, I could never understand how guys, like, they see the same people, they park the same cars, and they see the person coming out, and they just stand there and wait for their ticket. No. You see that person getting ready to leave inside the restaurant, you bust your ass and sprint to their car and have it waiting for them. That's how you get the tip. It takes a little extra effort, but that's the way it goes. Stories from that job, which I'll elaborate in more detail in other videos, but I want to, so that I remember, my friend John Conway was working with me, and he wrapped this drug dealer's car around a dumpster, and I made him go out the other side, and the guy left, and for a week we thought we were going to get shot. The guy stole our valet parking sign, and it ended up in a riot. And guys I worked with stealing bags of cash, and anything that wasn't nailed down in the car they would steal. I never did that. Guys doing lines of coke on the back of cars in the parking lot. The bouncer, who was like Mr. Michigan runner-up or something, Stan, taking little girls out to cars and giving them coke and doing God knows what with them in the car. And us getting kicked out of lots and seeing my boss come and with rage in his eyes. And yeah, it was an interesting job. And but like everything, it had to come to an end because of an altercation that I'll get into more detail with in another video. And after that, and that's one of the places I got my love for having, because I kind of ran my own crew, and I didn't have a boss. I just had to give the guy that owned the lots. He didn't really own them, but tradition said that he got a piece of the lot. Revenue, I just had to give him money every week, and I pretty much ran my own show, and I really, really liked running my own business. Then I decided, that I wasn't going to have a global valet parking business, so I had to get a college education. Back in our time, college was the ticket. You had to do it if you wanted to advance and have a decent job. Today, I highly recommend everyone, if you can afford it, great. College is a great way to get out of your house and party and meet people and grow up a little bit. If you can't afford it, you can still do great. And if you have the everything's out there, you can learn anything. The programs are out there. You don't need a degree. Quite frankly, I think that it's shameful what most of our colleges are doing and the money they're taking because of the subsidized government student loans that let them charge whatever they want. Without question, what you pay for a college education is at most colleges is absolutely not worth it. It should be a third or a quarter of the price they charge. But because of government subsidized loans, they can charge whatever they want. And it's absolutely not worth that. Is it great, a good stepping stone to get your kid out of the house and give them some responsibility in a controlled environment and have them meet people and learn the ways of the world outside of their parents' home? Yes. Is it worth what most of these colleges is charging to do that? Absolutely not. So think long and hard and fast about that. My first job out of college, I got a bachelor's in engineering degree from the University of Michigan in engineering physics. I got interested in computers because they were just becoming a thing at that time, and I concentrated in computer science and got a programming job with a company in Ann Arbor from a newspaper clipping. They happened to be located right across the street from our apartment that Leslie and I were living in Ann Arbor. And back in the day, we had the newspaper where you found ads. That's how you got a job. I wish I would have gone through more of the career placement stuff at school, but I didn't have a counselor or anything. I just took classes, and there was no career counseling when I was going to school. I don't know where, I'm sure there was, but no one showed me how to do that or where I should go, or I didn't have to go see a counselor, and no one gave me career advice or said, go to this career placement thing or whatever and they'll help you get a job. There was none of that. And I went to a good school. So, I found a job out of a newspaper ad, and it was good. But I hated sitting in front of a computer I liked it in school because that's all I had to do, but I hated doing it for work. It was just mind-numbing. I liked what I got out of valet parking. Hustling, getting paid. And so I tried to find positions where I could hustle more. Then I was always interested in working with different businesses, and that's one of the interesting things, even though the position I have in my current position is remedial for the most part, but it does let me learn a whole new business and learn and do things that I haven't done before, and that's what I'm all about. I want to be challenged. I don't want to do the same thing all the time. I want to, even though it's a low-paying remedial position, I'm definitely doing things that I've never done before and that I have to learn to do and that challenge me. So that's cool. I'm learning new things, new skills, and learning about different businesses that I don't have any experience in. And that's gonna suit me somehow that I don't know how, but it will. So from the computer job, I was doing karate. And a lot of my jobs, you'll notice, came from my interests in fitness. So my wife Leslie and I were taking karate classes in Ann Arbor, and there was this guy who I would see at the gym, and he took karate with us, and we got to be friends and hung out, and he was a management consultant, and I ended up getting a job with him because I was interested in management consulting, because you got to work with different businesses, learn about different businesses. I didn't know, what business I wanted to be in, or so this was, I thought, a good opportunity to have experience with a bunch of different businesses working as a consultant, so I could learn maybe to do something that I could have my own business in, or something that I was more interested in. And one piece of career advice that I did get was, which I repeat repeatedly to people and to kids, was from one of my mentors, Robert Lytle, Mr. Lytle, who lived next door to Leslie's parents. And he was a very successful engineer, smart guy, MIT grad, and had his own engineering companies. And one time I had a job, I forgot, pumping their trees with some kind of medicine, because the trees in Grosse Pointe got sick, got some disease, so you had to pump them full of something so they didn't die. And I was doing that, I got like $20 a tree or something. And I was sitting there like measuring the chemicals, standing up into this measuring thing, and he's headed to work, and he stops his minivan and comes over to me, and he says, and he's in his business suit, and he's going to work. He doesn't have to, I'm just pumping stuff into a tree, right? He stops and he puts the measuring thing down on the ground. He's like, you really need to put that on something so it's not moving around in your hand, and then fill it up on the ground so that, you get an accurate measurement. And I'm like, gee, no shit. Why didn't I think of that? That's stuff, and that's just a great guy to do that. And a piece of advice he gave me was, go to work for the best company you can in whatever you want to do. And maybe if it's not the best, it's the second best. Whatever you can do to get in some company that's doing what you think you want to do. What do you think you want to do? You don't ever really know, but you're kind of interested in that, and that company does that. I'm going to go work for them. Figure out what they do, and then figure out how you can do it better. And that's how businesses are born, and that's how successful companies are born, and that's a great piece of advice. So I went to work for this management consulting company with my friend, and I did like database business analytics, getting data out of business databases to tell companies to have them make better decisions. And I worked for some very large Fortune 500 businesses, and it was very interesting, did a lot of different projects. And then I went and started getting my MBA at the University of Michigan, Dearborn, at night. And it was a drag, and the professors were boring, and everyone was asleep in class, so I wanted to get something better out of that process. So I was looking into full-time programs, but I was starting a family, and I didn't really have the money to just go to school again. So I was looking into weekend programs or part-time programs, and my dad's friend did the University of Chicago, had a weekend program, and I ended up getting into that, and that was really cool. The verdict's out on whether it's worth the money or not again, but back in the day, we didn't have the internet at that time. That's if you wanted to learn about something and have something on your resume that would get you your next job, that's what you had to do. And some of the contacts that I made from that, because I went there led to the best clients I had in my financial planning business. That led to more clients. So, had I not done that, I wouldn't have had those clients. So, and they provided lots of income for many, many years. And so I wanted, I was into Wall Street and money, and just the stock market fascinated me. And I don't know why, looking back on it, because it's all bullshit. It really is just like smoke and mirrors, man. And it just gets bastardized, and people just like waste so much money on that crap. But it interested me at the time, and I wanted to be Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. And that's what you did, but there really wasn't anything like that in Michigan. And I ended up going to doing I thought maybe I'd go work at one of our clients that I had as a management consultant, which was the Kellogg company. That seemed like a cool company to work for. And I went and started a job there, and Leslie and I moved out there, and it was so absolutely mind-numbing boring, and not, I need to be in things that are performance driven. Like, people are like, we have to win. You need to perform. You need to do more calls and make more sales. And Kellogg's been making cereal for 200 years, and they make cereal and people buy it. And it was, a good experience to learn what I didn't want to do. And it was just absolutely, we'd have meetings from 7 a.m. until 5, everyone home at 5. And there was nothing else you could do to make more money or do more work or make things more efficient. It's like they just did what they did, and it was just boring as hell. And we hated the town out there and had some bad experiences out there. And so we moved back, and I ended up going back to the company I started with right out of college to be more in a business development role, helping them get more business. And instead of being on the technical side. So I thought that was really cool. The internet was just starting. They were doing some internet stuff. The tech boom was just starting. And they weren't ready. They weren't ready for me. And they didn't give me any direction, and they didn't like the direction that because if you're not going to give me direction, I'm going to do the best I can with what I think is the right direction. And they didn't like that direction, but they didn't tell me what direction they wanted to go in. So they hired this guy whose claim to fame was suing Microsoft because he wrote some flight simulator, or the company he started wrote some little flight simulator that he claimed Microsoft stole, and he sued them and won a bunch of money. And the guy was just a turd. He'd just sit in his office, not communicate anything, or just like mumble under his breath. His name was Hugo. Who has the name Hugo? Besides a cartoon character. So him and the founders would be in their office, his office all the time. I'm doing my thing, So one of the things I came up with, believe it or not, was cellular was just getting big at that time, and I developed some relationships with Ameritech, who was the first cellular company in Michigan. I'm like, wow, this cellular stuff, that's cool. I thought it's going to be really big. We could do applications like taking cellular and combining it with this thing that's called a GPS that was like this big that we put in a computer. We had one of the first ones because we were doing military work, and we could tap into the cellular towers and have a map, and you could see where to go and where you were going on this map. Literally, that's an idea I had. I kid you not. And they didn't think it had any merit. Okay, so, we just, like every one of our phones is like a GPS map now, but, I didn't literally, this is what we need to focus on. They didn't think so. So I'm getting my MBA at the time. They're paying for half of it. One of the big mistakes we made was taking government loans, which is why I'm not taking any goddamn government money in this COVID shit. I don't want it. I have enough government money and it's not frickin' free. We took government loans because they would just send us money. You just like sign on the dotted line, apply, and they'd send you money. And we had a growing family, and we were hustling, and you never have enough money. And even though the companies I work for, every one of them paid for half of my MBA, which wasn't cheap, at the University of Chicago, and we still took loans out, and it cost us, and it was a drag on our finances for years. But so the company I was with, the tech company that I went back to, paid for half of my MBA. And Hugo calls me into his office one day and says, I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? I will give me some marching orders and I will execute. And he's like, well, you should know what to do. And I'm like, what do you think I should do? And he's like, I think you should turn in your resignation. It's the only job I've ever been fired from in 30 years of working. And I said, I can't do that. And he said, why? And I said, because in my contract, had you read it, it says that if I quit, if I resign, I have to pay you back the educational assistance that the company's given me. And this dumbass motherfucker didn't even know that. That's what a fucking idiot he was. So I left, and I just didn't go to work. And I was working on getting another job with a merchant bank in Bloomfield Hills to get into finance. I wanted to break into finance. And they had offered me a position. And so they let me go without having to pay back any of the loans. And I started with this merchant bank, which I didn't even know what it was. The guy impressed me, but he was full of shit. I drove to Bloomfield Hills from Chelsea. I was early to work than all my bosses, and I left later than them. And I cold called companies to try and get finance work from them. And I knew more about what I was doing than the guys I worked for. So I saw an ad for Merrill Lynch in Crane's business. I had a young family. I needed more structure. This company didn't provide any benefits, nothing, no training. I was on my own in my office trying to figure out what to do, no direction. I knew more about the shit I was doing than these guys. I don't know if it was like a front for, I don't know what these guys were doing. I don't know how they made any money, but it was weird and kind of shady. So I ended up going and interviewing for this financial consultant position at Merrill Lynch in Detroit. And the guy I interviewed with thought I would be a good fit for this group that handled high net worth and institutional clients because of my MBA. And it was working for an ex-husband and wife. They were partners. They were married, but then they were divorced, but they were still business partners. So that should have told me something, but they knew the business and they were really good. And I thought I could learn a lot from them, at least for my future and maybe doing my own thing. And I did. I learned, you worked 12-hour days. I'd commute again from Chelsea to Detroit every day. And did that and learned, probably 10 years worth of finance and brokerage business in 5 years that I spent there. It was a grind. I cold called hundreds of people and clients every day. They had great sales training, so the training was really good. The benefits were really good. That's where we had most of our children. And I learned a lot from the husband, ex-husband and wife. They were interesting characters. The woman would wear hardly any clothes, and the managers would hardly tell her to not do that because she was part of a class action suit that was suing them for gender discrimination. So they couldn't touch her or talk to her, and she was a huge producer, and so was her ex-husband. Her ex-husband was the biggest producer, one of the biggest at the firm. And it was high pressure, and I learned how to, again, hustling and working under pressure, and working with the stock market and learning how to sell. And then we were looking to buy this farm, and my father-in-law's business, which I was always fascinated with, called structured settlements, was at a turning point, and I'll get more into that also. And there were they needed someone that wasn't in their business but was friendly to them to do a part of the business that they were losing at the time. And I was looking to do my own thing, build my own practice. We bought the farm. It had a milk house that I could use as an office, even though we had no internet or phone. And my father-in-law set me up for a year so I could get started, transition, learn, the structured settlement business, and start my own niche financial consulting and investment business, which I started, called White House Financial, because our house was white. It has 4 pillars in the front. We started a farm business called White House Stables, and built that from, I had like $1 million in assets, and most of which was my father-in-law when I started. And in 2001, it was right after September 11th, and everything was crazy and things were uncertain. And from cold calling and networking and hustling, I built that company into 156 clients over 17 years. That's all I did, and it provided a good living for me and my family. Not as much as I wished, but it did. We lived for 17 years off of my efforts and my income, off of the ideas I had in my head of how I can get clients, how I can service clients, and it did, and I was good at it. And I made mistakes for sure. Hired too much, got too much office space, but I was able to sell the company after the last financial crisis we went through. Weathered that. My old first employer, Merrill Lynch, went under, had to get taken over. Our company didn't. We were strapped, but I ended up being able to sell a good company. I never thought that I'd be able to sell my company with just clients. And what led me to that was I was getting up there in age, and I didn't have anyone in the business that could do what I did. I had assistants, and they could process stuff and do a lot of administrative stuff, but I didn't have anyone that could grow the business or do the actual investment stuff. So I was looking for a partner, and I put the word out with my broker-dealer, Sigma Financial, to find a partner for me if they could. And they recommended this one guy. So we got together, and he seemed like a good fit, and I did my due diligence, and I thought they did their due diligence, and we were going to merge our businesses. His wasn't as nice as mine, but so we had to get the business valued to figure out what the partnership split was. And it turns out he had compliance issues where he was going to lose his license. So I had offered to buy his practice from him, but not at the price he wanted. and I didn't even know any of his clients, and they were, not nearly as nice as mine, because he sold shitty, crappy, high commission paying products, and his clients still to this day, I don't know what's it been, 10 years, 6 years. I still get calls at my business for him, looking for him. Like, that's how good of an advisor he is. 6 years, his clients still don't know where he is. And I felt myself, and I thought I'd have my practice like forever, until the end of time. And I'd die in my chair at my desk. And I felt myself being envious of him, that he was going to get a chunk of change, maybe for like a year of trying to figure out of income, and he could go like try and figure out something else to do. And I'm like, whoa, where is this coming from? I thought you wanted to do this for the rest of your life. I was envious of him. And at that time, I had just started doing CrossFit, and our daughter Reagan was going through some challenges, and I got her into CrossFit, and we were really into it. And I researched the CrossFit business, and I wanted to try and like take the good things about CrossFit and the CrossFit business and fit them into our financial planning business, like the group thing and the intensity thing, and but I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I'm like, well, maybe I asked Reagan if what she thought about us starting a fitness business, and she was really excited about it. And we had some debts that I could pay off if I sold my practice and wipe that clean and have a clean slate. So that's what we did, and we started Country Spirit CrossFit in March of 2014. And I got multiple stories from each one of these businesses and experiences that I'm going to use in the book that I'm going to do and these videos. So many stories from Country Spirit CrossFit. Did that, built that from 0 clients. Never coached a class in my life until the first class I coached at our business that we opened up on Jackson Road on the first day. And it was very, very fulfilling. Ended up merging with Strong Together Fitness 2 years ago from my first intern in my financial business, Trisha, also a Chelsea resident who moved to New Jersey and started a CrossFit box there. She was about a year ahead of me. The first time I heard about CrossFit was when I saw that Trisha on LinkedIn, it popped up, congratulate Trisha on a certification. She got her CrossFit Level 1 certification. I'm like, oh, what's that? That sounds kind of cool. Like, that's what I'm into. And that's the first I heard of it. And lo and behold, 4 years later, we end up affiliating with them because it spawned like 4 other gyms. And being part of something bigger than yourself is always better than just yourself, and that's what they provide. And they provide ideas, and we're in this together, especially in this environment. So it's been really good. And it just was, I coached like every class starting from 5 a.m. until 8 p.m. and it didn't feel like work. And I sold memberships, and we grew that business to 110 members. And then COVID happened. We were literally at our peak of that business right as COVID happened, and we've weathered it better than most other gyms for sure. And we decided to open back up on June 15th, and we've been open since then, and haven't been shut down yet. But I look at myself like Tyler Durden in Fight Club, and we're like the Fight Club in this environment. And then because I didn't know where this fitness thing was going to go, and if all our members were going to leave, and if I did and could we even coach classes, and would it, and I don't enjoy just doing the online thing. I'll do it, but it's not nearly as fulfilling as doing the in-person group coaching and one-on-one coaching. So I didn't know if I wanted to do that and keep doing that. So I had to find something else. And at the same time, my structured settlement business, which is part of what led us into problems even before COVID, just dried up because of interest. It's totally interest rate sensitive, and interest rates are negative now, going negative because of our government's lack of fiscal responsibility, and that business is pretty much dead. So that our income that allowed me to do the gym business, because that's not at a place where it's paying me enough to support my family and pay our bills, I had to get other occupation work. The only thing that came out, I've applied for hundreds of jobs, and had like 5 or 6 responses, and everything's dried up and frozen because of COVID. And the only thing that would hire me is this large home retailer, and so that's where I'm at.